mean, data science isn't a new concept, right? It's been around for the last 10 to 20 years. But the last few years, you've really seen a big influx of the need to have applied data science within your large enterprises. And I think that comes down to two reasons, right? One is that machine learning and data science and AI is here to come, and it's not going anywhere. You need it to be able to be more scalable, more effective. But at the same time, there's more startups, some more kind of businesses coming up that's able to bring in algorithms into their solutions. And so you're seeing a lot more investments into technology that houses their own algorithms as well. So the combination between the market needing it, but also more technology spinning up, there's lots of flavors when it comes to data science and those kind of jargon soup, as I would like to call it. But there's a lot of flavors, and at the end of the day, it comes down to application. And there's a way of how can you work with algorithms, especially for people that are not classically trained, especially in a world where data scientists are not every other person. How can you make sure you still bring that technology into your realm, but in a way that isn't just theoretical, it's actually affecting the bottom line.
So you've created a solution where it's a lot easier. The work isn't necessarily on the company, right? They don't have to go out and hire a team of data scientists probably to build up all this knowledge and go through their database and find these patterns. You're providing a solution that really with just a few lines of code, they can leverage your software, right?
Yeah, I mean, we work with one of the world's kind of largest enterprises today, whether it's BevMo or consumer packaged goods, or even things that's in the financial sector and firms there. At the end of the day, there's a whole process when you think about the personalization journey, and many firms are on different stages and spectrum across this. You have some that's in the early stages trying to figure out how do you actually collect data in a really scalable way? What can you do with that data once that's in your system? How do you tag your sites? And then you can move on to something more advanced, which is how can you actually optimize that consumer journey? How can you start generating baselines that's not biased? And then taking that step further, which is how can you now do this predictive personalization at scale? Because the human eye can only do so much. As a person, we can maybe at most figure out that there's 10 types of people coming to my site, but what can you actually give them as a unique experience, and how can you divide that up so it's really a one-on-one experience, is where you need a system or a platform that will help you kind of go across all of that. You know, where we see that niche is we have the marketers who are really eager to get the ROI and the conversion counts, but not necessarily the support to be able to roll out new solutions every other day. And then you have the analytics teams that wants to be able to get results and transparency into how the AI is functioning. Then you have the engineering teams where, to be honest, no engineering teams want to integrate marketing technologies. Usually they want to build product. And we know this. I mean, in my past experience, I want to build product. I don't necessarily want to integrate something that was asked of me that I didn't have a say in, right? So when you see that kind of trifecta of people that exist in all larger enterprises, that's where we sit in there. We help to bridge that gap between all the different groups. So there's a little bit of everything for everyone. But at the end of the day, what's really effective is our AI is able to understand behavioral context and do something about it. So it's closing that loop.
Can you give an example for that part with understanding the behavioral context?
Yeah, I mean, one of our awesomest customers is BevMo. So if you've ever purchased alcohol on the West Coast, you've probably been to one of their stores. If you think about just how we change and adapt in our taste preferences, and I'll use myself as an example, right? I mean, most of the time I'm not heavily drinking, but when I do, I enjoy a nice glass of red wine here and there. But sometimes if it happens to be the end of a quarter and my sales team and my whole marketing team and my whole team does fantastic and my product's growing, well, I want to make sure everyone gets to celebrate together. So I may go and purchase spirits that I normally would not drink and get that delivered over to my teammate's house, which is a very different behavior than my traditional, which could be more of a preference towards red wine. But also because if it's hot outside and it's a weekend, I may be interested in something that's cold and bubbly. And so this really dynamic way of understanding what we want in the moment becomes really important, instead of just kind of slapping a one-size-fit-all hat on Diane saying, I'm only into buying red wines. It's able to have a really dynamic approach, which is what helps to drive the revenue, the sales, and all in all, just stickiness, right? And your customers coming back, retaining them so that you can really drive and give them a better experience.
So with the software, so if you go to the BevMo site, it could pick up that you're not necessarily shopping for yourself. There's some kind of celebration happening or some kind of momentous event happening, and here's some bubblies that you could use to celebrate.
Exactly. And this type of insight, the context behind it can be applied in all sorts of different ways without you having to uproot your existing marketing tech stack. Where really this AI is a service that you can stick in. You can make your existing tech stack really, really smart. So you can put our recommendations, our dynamic content, our personalization on your existing website. You can inject it into your email. So instead of having to redevelop your email templates every time, you end up having one with millions of variations, which saves huge amounts of time. We help other brands cut their newsletters from 6 weeks of prep down to an hour. But all of that comes from getting better content, better experience, but also a better process.
The 6 weeks down to an hour or a couple of hours is that's really kind of mind blowing. It doesn't even seem real. And now, usually, how long does it take a customer of yours to kind of get up and running for even just a website or something?
Yeah, I mean, we recently just signed a few other new partners. And so our launches are 14 days or less. And so our goal is we want to get you a de-risked assessment of whether you should partner with Brainify in the long term. And I think a lot of enterprise marketing technologies out there, they promise you the world, and then they give you a 6 to 9 month integration time. And then they tell you at some point you're going to see an ROI. For us, we like to make sure that we prove it out for you. So you're not just coming in here based off of only trust, deciding if we're going to be your partner for the next 3 to 5 years, but we essentially give you a 30-day trial. And this POC is a paid POC, but we launch in 14 days, give you 2 different use cases. One, which is a existing use case that you can really see the split test and the A/B test to see the difference between Brainify versus your existing process. Okay. And the second one, which is something that you may want to launch, but it would take your engineering team maybe 3 or 6 months before you could really get it up and going to make sure the data feeds are going the right way, the idea of what you want and strategy and analytics to be set up. So we'll help you launch that in a really quick fashion to show you the speed about having a system that's plug and play and really lightweight like ours.
How long's the company been around, Brainify?
So we've been around since 2016. When we first started, we were actually really focused on developing as an API. We wanted to be leveraged in a lot of new tools and software. Yeah. And we ended up meeting our first marketing partners around 2018. And ever since then, we've been focused a lot on consumer enterprises on the marketing team or the brand teams. So we specialize in specialty retailers and consumer packaged goods now.
Okay. And so you're this new company, relatively small, competing against these much larger, slower moving companies. So that, in many ways, that's a nice advantage to enable you guys to really kind of hone in on a niche. Have you seen that?
Yeah, I mean, speed to market is one benefit, right, of being able to use our platform. But I think where our partners end up staying is because the results are really effective and the algorithms are things that you don't have to train yourself. I think there are some brands which are very lucky if they have a big data science team that will support marketing. But majority of the larger kind of Fortune 500 brands, they find that marketing, they kind of have to depend and rely on themselves to be able to strategize, find user behavior patterns, and then do something about it. So where we come in is we help with that perspective, and then we help drive it home a little bit earlier. At the end of it, speed is what gets us through the door, but our results is what makes us stick after the 30-day POCs.
No, that's really excellent.
It's a good mix. I think you don't get very many enterprise grade solutions that can do that. You get a lot of SaaS tools like Twilio where you can hook up, but you need to have your own engineers. You need to think about your own, how you're going to organize that data. You have to think about your own strategies and then de-risk which ones are actually the right use cases for you, and then test it and then track it, right? So there's a lot of moving parts, which is what bogs a lot of people down, not just marketers, right? But if you just think about as a daily consumer, all the things that goes into the engagements that you're getting, whether it's a simple email to a web experience, it's not that simple to actually set up. There's a lot of work that's put in there, a big communications calendar, 6-8 weeks in advance to try and get you this one thing that may look really simple. And so that's where we come in, right? Is finding that good balance between giving those enterprise the custom and the capabilities at their scale with all the amount of consumers, but also doing it in a way that builds up as a step-by-step approach. And so that's really where I think is, at least from a business model standpoint, we've done a really good job at.
This is just going to have to be applied to every industry, or those companies that don't do it, they're going to not have that engagement from those consumers and eventually start going out of business.
Exactly. I mean, personalization is something that's so key.
Yeah.
And there's definitely lots of definitions around what's good personalization, how to do it. There's some approaches which is really kind of clustered and segmented, where you try and find a vendor that's really good at segmenting, a vendor that's really good at curating, a vendor that's good at analytics. And then there are some where they want to find personalization engines as a whole. So definitely lots of different approaches. And, you have to figure out what works the best for you. But the way I feel our partners have found really good successes in short amounts of time that's persistent comes down to thinking about the business process and knowing that whatever vendor that they bring in shouldn't be disrupting and extending the amount of time it takes to actually run different types of experiences. At the end of the day, it's all about quick iterations, getting good results, and then using those strategies to be able to prioritize other things and allowing a platform to help you capture that long tail of opportunities that you and your team may not see, right? Like, we're all human. We don't have all the time in the world to stay up 24 hours, refrain from hobbies and eating and all these things. But a system like software can. And so it's there to help you. It's not there to replace you. But with personalization as it's moving forward, it's become a more holistic approach. You have to really think about the consumer experience from different channels, different content, the fact that their preferences change. Like, today, I may be interested in investing in sports. The next day, I may be interested in investing in tech. You never know. So you have to be able to be dynamic and be really adaptable. And that comes down to having good software and good algorithms. To us, when we look at how we build Brainify, it's this whole umbrella. It's not just having the best algorithms or the best business process. It's that we have to make those meld so that at the end, we're really helping our partners in a way that goes beyond just here's algorithms, apply it, but really changing that personalization process and expectation of what you should be doing for your end consumers.
With these trends starting with the personalization or really starting to maybe even accelerate or getting even more specific, where do you see this going in like the next 5 to 10 years? Did you have some kind of outlook on where this trend could continue?
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you maybe this outlook from two different perspectives. One, which is from the consumer side. We are, getting more access to digital assets and more websites and just a lot more overall content, right? So there's a lot more noise. And for us to be able to be really attached to a brand, to really feel the need to go back and participate and engage in loyalty and create that stickiness, we need to have an expectation. Like, it's oftentimes that we already expect that the right thing is shown to us in a very quick way. Mm-hmm. And so from a consumer standpoint, in the next 5 years, I think the speed for how we get to what we need or what we want to discover has to be much quicker. And it's expected that brands will essentially deliver on this. And if they don't, we move on, right? So from a consumer standpoint, think about yourself, how you interact with your apps, whether it's shopping, whether it's engagement, whether it's thinking about what's in your pantry for your household goods. It's a really, really fast process. So speed becomes really important. Relevance becomes even more important. And the ability to think ahead to what I'm going to need. For example, when I'm about to run out of a spice in my spice cabinet, getting ahead of those moments is kind of what I'm expecting as the trend and also what I will be interested in to stay put with a brand. I think enterprises are at a really interesting time. You have some industries where they're much further ahead. So you think about fashion, think about maybe the Fortune 100 retailers. They're all very ahead where they want to use as much algorithms as possible. They want personalizations. They want, custom curations and things like this. And that's great. They're really moving towards that. For them, it really comes down to how can you get ahead of people's needs and doing this at a larger scale across all of your different SKUs and consumers, just lots of combinations. And then you have maybe like consumer goods on the other end where they're starting to explore data collection, first party data, because in the past they've always sold through third parties. So how can they start building up their own data repertoire and their strategies there? So with that, for them, it's about how can they jump instead of going through the same trials and tribulations as industries that's further along, where they have to go step by step in collecting and then doing just other things with it. How can they be almost like started and jump to the end where they're almost competing with the highest industries?
Yeah.
And so for that, I think the trends are going to be very industry specific, but overall from a consumer goods standpoint, there's going to be a turning point. They either will find vendors that's really good at bringing customer data together, or they're going to be smarter and think further along and pick vendors like us where connecting and collecting is one piece of it, but doing it with purpose is another. And then on the retail side and industries that's a little bit faster along, it comes down to who has the better algorithms and the ability to test them in a really quick way to know that there's ROI and to speed up the ROI process. Wow. So you're not waiting 2 years before vendors are giving you what you need, but being able to see that, like, I brought this vendor on, we got it going, we're not bogged down by the process, and we're really able to excel at the experience and, have a breath of fresh air that's no longer a tug of war between engineering, marketing, analytics to get things done, but now it's a team that's cohesive. So those are the trends I see in the next kind of 5 years or so. Personalization is here to come, but there's different approaches. I think smart personalization, when you think about algorithms and AI as a service, is going to become more prevalent. So at the end of the day, retention is really important. We're in the retention business. So I'm a little bit biased there, but I'm a believer that if you're going to be running any sort of acquisition to get more customers, sticking them down a leaky funnel is probably one of the worst things you could do to help your bottom line. So that's where I sit. I think technology is going to get stronger. Different business approaches will come out, but consumer expectations will continue to remain high. And so for brands to deliver on those becomes tougher, which is why they need software that will help them versus just adding more body count to be able to run better marketing.
And for this week's Notes and Charts, make sure to go to investors.com/podcast, where you'll find details for each episode in the podcast episode section. And make sure to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast if you haven't already. We'd really appreciate it. You can also send us your questions and comments to investingpodcast@investors.com. We would love to hear from you and may use your comments on an upcoming episode.